Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Natural Food Pantry Education Series. I'm here today with my guest, Dr. Owen Wiseman, who is here to discuss colds and flus. With a knack for making meaningful connections, Dr. Owen has had a long history of guiding and helping others transform their health. As a medical advisor, consultant, public speaker, and regular contributor to media, he mentors and educates with a dedicated passion. Dr. Owen is devoted to using the growing field of evidence supporting the clinical benefits of nature. As a proud member of Park Prescriptions, he helps patients incorporate nature-focused principles into their life and reconnect with the world around them. He has a keen interest in healthy aging, high performers, brain health, and fostering a safe space for LGBTQ individuals in his practice. Welcome, Dr. Owen. What an amazing bio.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was so well spoken and articulated.
No, thank you. I'm really fascinated by this Park Prescriptions. I'm definitely going to pop onto their website after and learn more about that. I absolutely love nature, and I completely believe in the healing abilities and power of nature.
Well, that's the thing. Now we have the evidence to back it up, and we know we feel good when we get outside, but what's the science behind it all? And that's a little bit about what I tend to do in my own practice.
Awesome. I can't wait to learn more. Let's move on to our conversation today. Our focus is on colds and flus, and flu season is among us. And with COVID in the picture for the second year, people are feeling really anxious and stressed about getting sick, understandably. If they get sick, they need to stay home and isolate, and do you get COVID tested? And there's all these variables that have come into the picture since COVID. So do you have any advice for people around the stress and the anxiety, and maybe some suggestions on what they can do to help tame and bring some ease to that stress?
Yeah, so I mean, the stress and anxiety is very real. And even in my own practice, I've definitely seen an increase in stress-related complaints and a lot of mental health issues as well, where people just feel isolated and they feel scared and anxious. And Canadians are actually incredibly stressed objectively. They ran a study and they found that 57% of us were reporting feeling stressed compared to 43% globally. So the feeling is very real. And let me validate all Canadians watching that it's okay to feel what you're feeling right now. But I think a big part of how do we support our health, how do we feel better and less anxious, goes back to the foundations of health. We spend a lot of time focusing on what is that magic pill I can take to feel better. But at the end of the day, we really want to look at our foundations of sleep. So having a proper routine, especially right now with the return back to school and the return back to work in person for a lot of individuals, establishing a really good, solid routine around your day will help increase predictability and reduce anxiety. So that's one thing I spend a lot of time chatting with my own patients. And then sleep, movement, diet. It's really important that we're focusing on all of these areas. And when we hear the word movement as medicine or exercise, that doesn't mean 60 minutes of weightlifting at the gym every single day, because I know for a lot of busy individuals, that is just not an option. And you know what? There's a lot of us who don't feel safe quite yet returning to gym facilities or facilities where a lot of people are gathering. So, even a 20-minute walk around the neighborhood or 15 minutes of moving around at home can still be beneficial as much as going to that gym all the time. So really looking at foundations of health. And then, for myself, I also keep something called Relax Spray on hand as well. It's Canada's first botanical-based anti-stress spray. So it is something that is accompanying me everywhere I go right now.
Love it. Love it. I love what you had to say about exercise. It's so true. And it's so important to do exercise or movement that we enjoy. So getting up for walks in nature, hikes, spending time with family, exercising and moving the body. I teach Nia dance fitness. This is something that I fell in love with a couple of years ago. And now I can't step away. It's the first thing I do every morning, and and that routine is so important. When we develop that routine, like you said, we tend to eat healthier and we tend to remember to take our supplements and
Exactly.
becomes much more rhythmic and systemic.
And I think a big thing is switching the mindset around exercise from waking up and going, oh, I have to do it, to I'm going to feel good after I exercise. And it's a little more motivating than I have to drag myself out of bed and put on the outfit and do the whole routine.
Yeah, for sure. And so, can you explain to viewers, moving on to our next question, the main difference between colds, flus, and let's throw COVID into the conversation?
Yeah, it can be hard in the beginning because you've probably heard the talking point at some point about COVID resembling a simple cold and flu in the beginning. And so with the common cold, it's usually bacterial based, which gives us some really good ways of differentiating it from COVID or influenza. So often with a bacterial infection, you get the buildup of bacteria, which causes a bit of discoloration. So especially with the mucous membranes, that's when you get those really thick green, yellow boogers, especially in our children as well. You often see they're picking their nose or they're maybe blowing into a tissue, although that doesn't happen too often. Whereas with influenza being a virus, you often get a clear mucus. So that's a really easy way, especially for parents, even to quickly take a peek at the booger. Is it clear? Is it discolored? And that'll help kind of determine what next steps you need to take as a parent as well. And then with both the common cold and influenza, you're expecting them to start to improve. So with the common cold, you often see 5 days is pretty common, with that peak around 2.5, 3 days. Influenza tends to improve within 7 to 10 days is pretty typical. But with COVID, you're going to have that period where it might resemble a cold or a flu, but it can quickly turn and actually the symptoms get a lot worse. And that's one way of knowing I need to seek further medical attention because this is not getting better. And the other interesting side is with COVID, we hear about the loss of taste and smell being quite common or even a little bit diminished. So if you do hear your child or hear anyone of your loved ones saying that I can't taste this, I can't smell that anymore, it might be worth looking into a little bit more. But from our own health perspective, what's quite interesting is zinc also plays a big role in taste and smell. And when you actually look at the research, zinc deficiencies lead to poor COVID outcomes. So there's a neat link there that's just worth mentioning.
Excellent. Thank you. And I know we'd all love to avoid getting sick. It's such it's an inconvenience when it comes to work and life. But the reality is that it's important for us to contract occasional colds and flus. It's an important factor in building immunity. If you can elaborate on that a little bit, that would be great. And maybe explain what the normal expectancy is, the annual expectancy of colds and flus amongst both adults and children.
Yeah, so I mean, I wish we had a magic pill that we could just wave a wand and feel better. Unfortunately, we do not. We would be very rich people if we ended up coming up with that. But when it comes to immunity, so the immunity that we have from actually interacting with this virus or this bacteria for the first time is called natural immunity or innate immunity. And so that's the immune system's first response to this pathogen. And the way I like to spend time explaining it to my own patients when they ask is, think of a battlefield. So our body is the castle. We have these walls that are built up to keep invaders outside. So when we first meet a new invader, a type of pathogen, a virus that we've never seen before, we don't know their strategy. So are they going to come from our flanks? Are they going to come from behind? Will they use catapults? Will they use swords? We have no information on these pathogens, these invaders. And so we just pretty well waste a lot of resources and attack it really, really strongly so we can kill it. And then what we've done is we take little pieces of the enemy, almost like taking their armor or their helmets, and we study them. We study their weapons. We better understand how are they attacking us? How are they trying to defeat the system? And so the next time we meet them, we're a little more efficient. We've adapted. So the adaptive immune system, we now understand how they're going to try and attack us, and we can better respond more efficiently, more effectively, and faster. So meeting those pathogens for the first time is very important for our bodies to actually learn, understand, comprehend. And that's why you want children, get dirty, play in the dirt, meet these different bugs, these different microbes. It's good for our microbial diversity throughout the body, really. And in terms of kind of the annual expectations, when you look at children, 6 to 8 colds or flus or illnesses throughout the year, it's not uncommon. And that's because they're around all these other kids. They don't have the same hygiene habits that adults hopefully have developed, especially after this year. And then adults are sick about 2 to 3 times per year is pretty common. And those numbers are good for all of us to know, because if you have a loved one and they fall outside that range and they're getting more sick than the average, perhaps they're a little immunocompromised. So we might look at their diet, we might look at their immune system, for instance, just to see really what's happening and what's going on.
Okay. Thank you. I really loved your analogy of the immune system. That was a great visual. I think it's a great way to explain to kids and adults how the immune system works.
If I was an artist, I'd be able to draw it out for them, but not my forte. I went into medicine.
I think we all know the common practices of hygiene, hand washing, coughing in the elbow, staying home when sick. But aside from the obvious, do you have any other recommendations for people when it comes to preventing colds and flus and helping to minimize the symptoms as well?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the big ones I think we all know very well by now is actually social distancing. So stay home when you're sick. It seems so silly to say now, but before the pandemic, oftentimes a lot of people would just push through that cold and that flu. And so they're not only putting themselves at risk being out in the environment and potentially meeting another pathogen that worsens their current condition, but they're also putting their colleagues and their coworkers and family members at risk as well. So I think one of the things we should be mindful about continuing to do is social distance when we're ill. If you feel that tickle in your throat and you have the privilege of being able to work from home, because it definitely is a privilege depending on what field you're in, stay home, work from home. And you know what, if you're feeling too terrible to work from home, take the day off and sleep, because you deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel better and healthy. And we see the data actually translate into real world applications. So in the winter of 2019 and 2020, Health Canada recorded about 43 confirmed cases of influenza. Last year with the lockdowns, they only confirmed 66 cases, a astronomical difference, because people were home, they weren't interacting, we couldn't go anywhere. And so if that doesn't show you the power of staying home when you're sick, I don't know what better would highlight it. So that's a really big thing I think all of us should continue doing. If you do need a little bit of a boost from different herbal options or supplement options, I'm a huge fan of Echinoforce. I have a lot of the different product types somewhere in my cupboard. So sore throat spray, I'll usually spray that on before I go outside. So I have a double barrier of my throat is now coated with something that has clinically proven antiviral benefits. And then I put my mask on, and it reduces the risk of secondary infections like pneumonia, like bronchitis, reduces the duration of cold and flu, so you get back on your feet quicker. So I'm a huge fan of that as my supplement choice. And then nature therapy. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I am a member of Park Prescriptions. I write prescriptions for patients to get outside and engage with nature. And you see clinical benefits as well, because it boosts your natural killer cells, which kill virally infected cells throughout the body. And then it can help prevent what's called T cell exhaustion. And T cells are one of your immune cells. When you go out in nature, it actually makes the immune system function better. So I'm a huge proponent of reconnecting with the natural world and living where I do, there's lots of access to different areas to go cross-country skiing, or even for just a gentle walk as well. So I'm a big proponent of nature therapy. And then zinc-based foods. We know zinc plays a huge role in wound healing and immune function. So getting it through diet, if you can, is always ideal. It's pretty prominent in meat, legumes, shellfish. Oysters are a huge source of zinc, but there's tons of different options to consider, and a quick Google search can provide you what fits your lifestyle best.
Excellent. So to sum it up, rest, stay home if you can, get out in nature, echinophores, zinc containing foods. And I know for myself, just converting over to a completely whole foods diet, like loading up on the vegetables and the plant-based foods, really helps to prevent when I catch a cold or a flu. It really helps prevent it from progressing into something worse.
So all those dark leafy greens.
Yes, absolutely. Lots and lots of great advice. And on that note, I'm super excited to share that you're going to be coming back to Natural Food Pantry to present a webinar on influenza on November 16th. Would you like to share with the listeners a little bit about what they can expect from the webinar?
Absolutely. And guys, I'm so sorry. I don't know why they keep inviting me back. There must be something about the relationship here. But my goal, and I think we really opened it up well in this conversation, is to highlight that difference a bit more between innate and adaptive immunity, and explore what does that mean in terms of real world applications, and where do we see it in that real world environment. I really want to talk about secondary infections like pneumonia, like bronchitis, and what makes us vulnerable to getting those secondary infections. What is the difference between someone who has the common cold and they just recover, and someone who has the common cold and they end up in the hospital with bronchitis, a really severe case. And the last thing, we really want to talk about, how do we better protect ourselves against the influenza season that is coming and is going to hit us hard, because we didn't see one really last year. So talking about diet and strategic supplementation and movement, nature therapy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us to share your knowledge. I'm really looking forward to having you back. Thanks everybody for following our education series. If you'd like to find out more about the upcoming workshops or subscribe to our monthly newsletter, please visit naturalfoodpantry.ca. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks everybody. Stay healthy.
Stay healthy, everyone.